So with Sandrone being an upcoming great main DPS, she's also bringing completely new mechanics with a whole new reaction with stellar conduct, and it's a whole new region and stuff like that, so it can be pretty confusing to get the right weapon for her, and you definitely don't want to get it wrong. So in this video I'll be helping you guys understand what does she need on a weapon for you to maximize her damage, and then gonna be ranking all of the weapons in the tier list based around which of them are going to provide her with the most damage. And yes, contrary to what most people believe, her best weapon is not the white iron greatsword. I know you're shocked. Before we continue that though, if you're trying to get Sandrone or her weapons or teammates, I know you're struggling with saving up for primo gems, but I got the solution for you. You should head to U7Buy, your ultimate gaming hub for safe, fast, and cheap in-game top-ups. From Genshin Impact to all of your favorite titles. The Genshin Impact's direct top-up page lets you recharge instantly. Check this out for example. The 8,080 Genesis Crystals price on the official store is going to be $99.99, which is so expensive. But on U7Buy, you notice that the storefront displays similar prices to the in-game store. But don't worry, the magic all happens in checkout. Once you click the buy now button, your total instantly drops to the actual discounted prices. And it can drop even more if you use my code Camilo. How to buy is also super easy. You just type your user ID, select your server and region, pay securely, and your account is going to be loaded instantly. It's that easy. Check the link in the description or the pinned comment to visit U7Buy, and remember to use my code Camilo for an extra 5% discount. Alright, so when it comes to what does Sandrone need on a weapon, in general she's a Stellar Conduct's main DPS, and Stellar Conduct is going to scale with attack and crit and stuff like that, and it's also going to scale with Elemental Mastery. So when it comes to her weapon needs, I would say attack is going to be the first thing you'd want to go for sure, whether it's high base attacks, attack percentages, any attack buffs that you can get from your weapon are going to be pretty good. So you definitely want to target weapons that can give you attack. The second thing you'd want to go for is going to be crit, whether it's crit damage or crit rate. Both of them are going to be equally as valuable. You just want to get as much as you can. At the end of the day, she's a main DPS. Your Stellar Conduct damage is also going to scale with crit, so you definitely want to make sure you have enough. The next thing you'd want to go for is actually going to be some energy recharge if it's possible. Now, it's probably better to just get it from your substats. I wouldn't really go for like full energy recharge weapons because she's a main DPS, so that's going to be a little too overkill. But in general, it's not going to be a terrible stat to get on Sandrone. You do want some for you to maximize your burst uptime. And then the last stat you might want is just going to be Elemental Mastery. And as I said before, yes, she does need Elemental Mastery, but she can just get it from her passive with Convert and Attack. So you don't really need to directly go for Elemental Mastery. Build an attack is just going to hit two birds at one stone. So going for attack weapons is just going to be much better, but Elemental Mastery weapons are not going to be fully terrible either. They're just going to be much less value. So in general, when it comes to the actual stats you might need, it's kind of simple really. It's just attack weapons with crit rare crit damage. So basically just stat sticks most of the time, except like some specific options that we're going to talk about in a bit. But yeah, knowing that, let's move on to the tier list and rank these weapons. So starting off with the 3-star options, as I said before, unfortunately, most of them are not going to be the best thing to use on Sandrone because they're just going to have low base attack and such. So we have the first Shadow, it's HP and low base attack, so it's going straight to D tier. Bloodstain is going to give you some Elemental Mastery, but it's a very low base attack, so it's definitely not the weapon you want to go for. Some damage bonus probably because you're going to have Electros in your team, but in general, not the best weapon. Let's just keep it a very low C tier just for the Elemental Mastery, and that's it. White Iron Greatsword, shockingly, it's not the best weapon you want to use on her, so it's going D tier. You have the Quartz, basically the same thing, so I'll just keep it at C tier. The Bay Club is just going to be attack, but there are probably just better attack statistics that you can use, so I keep it at high C tier. I don't think it's like an average weapon, it's probably a little below average. Skyrider Greatsword is physical damage, so it's going straight to D tier. Alright, now moving on to the 4-star options, we have the Favonius Greatsword, so it's just going to be a little lower base attack for a 4-star weapon, and it's going to give you energy recharge. That's definitely not the weapon you want to use on Sandrone. Energy recharge is usable, I guess, but yeah, just keep it at low C tier, but definitely not the weapon you want to go for. The Bell is just going to be HP and then some damage bonus. Definitely not the best thing, so probably keep it at either D or C tier. I keep it at D tier. It's not the weapon you want to go for. The Sacrificial is just going to be energy recharge too. It's going to reset your skill, but that's not going to be that important with Sandrone. Probably keep it at C tier too, just for the slightly higher base attack and then energy recharge, but definitely not the weapon you want to go for. Royal Greatsword is just going to be attack, and then you have the Royal Crit passive, which is not the best, but just as a simple attack stat stick, like most other attack stat sticks, like 4 stars, it's just going to be an average weapon, so I just put it at B tier. Nothing special, but not bad. Range Slasher is just going to be Elemental Mastery, and then potentially some damage bonus, just like C tier too. Prototype Archaic is just going to be kind of high base attack for a 4-star, and then also attack as a substat. The passive is just whatever, it's just some extra damage, but you can also use it as like a simple attack stat stick, so I just keep it at B tier too. White White Blind is just defense, and then it can give you some attack from the passive. I'll just keep it as C tier. Blacklift Slasher is gonna be kind of decent, I guess, just as a crit damage stat stick. It can potentially give you some attack, and that's gonna make it super good. Can give you a lot of attack if you kill more enemies, but against like big bosses, obviously, you're not gonna be able to get any of that. So using this weapon is always a bit of a gamble. I'll probably just keep it at B tier, honestly, this time, just as like a crit damage stat stick. Serpent Spine is basically the same thing. It's just gonna be a crit rate stat stick. Unfortunately, the damage bonus is not gonna be super useful for Sandrone, so it's basically the same thing. It's just like a crit rate stat stick. I'll just keep it right next to the Blacklift. I'll just keep it at B tier. Usually those weapons are better, but when you guys see the next weapons and their rankings, it's gonna make sense for them to just be at B tier this time, honestly. Probably the best at B tier, but I wouldn't say they're A tier material for Sandrone specifically. Lithic Blade is basically just gonna be considered a stat stick too, honestly. The passive can give you some crit rate and attack, but I don't think you're usually gonna use her with many leeway characters. I don't know, I just cannot think of many at the top of my head. Maybe like Beidou, I guess, but yeah, it's just like one max. So yeah, just consider it an attack stat stick. I'll just put it B tier too. Snow Toms, Star Silver, it's just gonna be physical damage, so it's just going D tier. Luxurious Sea Lord, just like an attack stat stick basically too, but with lower base attack, so I'll probably keep it lower B tier. Kagutsura Gikuri, it just ends your recharge and then elemental skill damage bonus, so it's just kind of whatever, so I'll just keep it as C tier. Machaira Aquamarine is just gonna be elemental mastery, and then it's gonna convert your elemental mastery as attack, which is not terrible. The problem is Sandrone does the exact same opposite, so it's just like a conflict there on which one to build. I'd keep it at B tier, super low B tier. I think it's not the best one you want to use, but it's not terrible. Akumaru, basically just an attack stat stick too. Also some elemental burst damage bonus, but it's kind of whatever. I just keep it at B tier too. First Regalia, it just ends your recharge, and then some elemental mastery. I just keep it like high C tier, but yeah, definitely not the weapon you want to use. Male Flower is going to give you elemental mastery, and then from the passive is also going to increase your attack and elemental mastery, which is going to be pretty good. The base attack is also kind of high for a 4-star weapon, so it's definitely pretty decent. I'll probably keep it just below the Blacklift and the Serpent Spine. I'll just keep it at B tier, like higher B tier. Talking Stick is just going to be crit rate with slightly higher base attack for a 4-star. It's also going to increase your attack. The passive, I'm not really sure if you're ever going to be able to activate it. I mean, I guess if you use like Bennett, you might be affected by Pyro, but usually that's not going to happen. So I just keep it at B tier too. There's like a simple stat stick. I'll just keep it maybe a little above the Blacklift and the Serpent Spine because it has higher base attack, but yeah, I just think B tier is probably the right place. Tidal Shadow is just going to be basically an attack stat stick too, but it can give you more attack from the passive if you just get healed, which is pretty easy to trigger, but obviously you want to make sure you have a healer with Sandrone. Potentially can be like Chi-Chi, for example, Shalonen, just whatever. Just make sure you have a healer, and it's going to be a pretty decent option. I'll probably keep it at B tier too, though. I think it's average, probably one of the best in general, if we're talking about free-to-play sort of stat sticks. So yeah, just keep it at B tier right under those, but it's probably the best free-to-play weapon in general. Ultimate Overlord's Magic Sword, just gonna be energy recharge and then some attack from the passive. Just keep it like low B tier. It does give you a decent amount of attack, I guess, but the energy recharge substat, I just don't like it as much. She does need it, but I don't think it's the thing you'd want to go for under weapon. You just probably want to stick to substats. So yeah, it's definitely usable, but just probably use the Tidal Shadow. Probably just a better option. Portable Power Saw, just like D tier. Fruitful Hook, basically you can just use it as a simple attack stat stick. I keep it like mid B tier, but I don't see any reason really for you to use it. Just use the Tidal Shadow. Same thing with the Earth Shaker, just a simple attack stat stick, so yeah, just keep it at B tier too. Flame Forged Insight, that's just gonna be elemental mastery, probably just like C tier. And finally we have the Master Key, it's just an energy recharge, and then some elemental mastery from the passive. I keep it very low C tier. Now, moving on to the 5-star weapons, usually they're just going to be much better just because of the high base stack, and they usually just make better stat sticks in general. So yeah, we have the Skyward Pride, super high base stack, a small energy recharge substat, which is not going to be useless, and that's pretty much it. This one specifically is not the best option, so I'll just keep it at B tier 2, but it's still pretty decent just for the high base attack. Wolf's Greystone is going to be the OG attack stat stick, a super high attack substat, and then also attack from the passive, and then it can potentially even give your party members attack, which is pretty good. So yeah, just keep it at A tier, honestly. It's just as good as it gets as an attack stat stick. I'm not keeping it at S tier because unfortunately there's still going to be a big difference between it and S tier weapons, but in general it's definitely a decent weapon, so if you have it, you should definitely use it on Sandrone. Song of Broken Pines is super high base stack, but then physical damage as substat, which is not the best thing. It can give you more attack from the passive, but not a huge amount, so I just keep it at B tier too. It just has like a base attack and maybe attack stat stick, but there's not much special about it. The Unforged is also an OG attack stat stat-stick. It just gives you attack and then more attack from the passive whenever you score hits. And then if you're shielded, it's gonna double this attack increase. Sandrone is shielded in a lot of her teams, primarily with like Nicole, for example. So she can probably use this weapon pretty good. So I'll just keep it at A tier. I think it's definitely a pretty good attack stat-stick. You have the Red Horn. It's gonna have a low base attack for a 5-star, but it's gonna give you a huge crit damage substat, which is gonna be pretty good. The passive is just whatever, but in general, it's a pretty good crit damage stat-stick. So I'll just keep it at A tier too. Beacon of the Reed Sea, also just a crit rate stat-stick basically, and then it can give you a pretty good amount of attack from the passive too potentially. It can give you up to 40% if you actually take damage, and just 20% if you're like shielded. So in general, it's pretty decent. I'd probably keep it at the top of A tier, probably as good as it gets in like the stat-sticks. You have the Verdict, high base stack, and then a small crit rate substat, a flat attack increase from the passive, which is pretty good. Rest of the passive is not usable, but it's just a simple stat-stick too, so I'll just keep it at A tier. Fang of the Mountain King, super high base stack, and then a very small crit rate substat. The passive is completely irrelevant to Sandrone. I keep it either low A tier or B tier. I keep it low A tier just for the super high base stack. It's gonna make all of your attacks scaling like Sands, for example, or Goblet or whatever scale much better. So I think it deserves low A tier. 1,000 Blazing Suns is gonna have super base stack and then a small crit rate substat. But this weapon is just gonna be like the ultimate stat stick. So it's gonna give you crit rate from the substat and then crit damage from the passive and then also attack from the passive. So it's gonna give you a lot of things. Honestly, that's the only weapon besides her signature that I would say probably deserves S tier because it's like the perfect stat stick for Sandrone. It gives you attack, crit rate, crit damage, everything basically. So I'll probably keep it at S tier, but it's still kind of far from her signature weapon. But yeah, I do think it deserves S tier. Just to the Mighty Wolf, just crit rate, passive is completely irrelevant, so I'll just keep it at A tier. And then finally you have her signature. It's the only weapon that actually like buffs her damage in like a pretty direct way besides being a stat stick. So it's just gonna give you crit damage and then give you attack and then actually directly buff your stellar conducts damage by a huge amount too. So obviously that's gonna result in huge damage increase over all of the other weapons. So it's gonna sit at the top of S tier and it's gonna be even considerably better than Moika's weapon. Even if they're both at S tier, it's gonna be considerably better. So unfortunately that's why I kept most of these weapons at A tier, most of these at B tier, because compared to her signature, the signature is that much better. So I had to adjust like the usual ranking of the weapons because we have, for example, the Serpent Spine or the Wolf's Gravestone. Usually they're like at A tier, but this time they're at B tier. Most of these 5 stars, usually a lot of them are also at S tier, but this time they're at A tier. So yeah, her weapon being super strong kind of like changed the ranking a little bit. I think Moika's weapon is actually kind of the only weapon that actually deserves being with at S tier. The other weapons are definitely a tier below. So unfortunately for her weapons, I don't think she's free-to-play friendly in that regard. You do have some free-to-play options, but definitely a huge difference between them and her signature weapon. Either way, tell me what weapons you guys are going to use in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video. Peace.